Have you ever wondered where that feeling comes from, that everything in life is interconnected and that, behind what we call chance, there might be a greater purpose? Many spiritual traditions around the world say that life doesn't start at the cradle nor end at the grave. Instead, it unfolds as part of an ongoing cycle of experiences and learning called reincarnation. From this perspective, the soul doesn't just live a single existence but goes through various journeys in the material realm, each bringing challenges, lessons, and opportunities for spiritual growth. And at the heart of this process, there are deeply intriguing questions. How does a soul choose its parents for its next life? What karmic factors guide that choice? And even more, after death, how does the soul determine its next partner or companion if it decides to experience a new kind of relationship or closeness? It's not uncommon for these questions to arise, especially when we go through losses or feel an immediate and inexplicable connection with certain people. It's as if something invisible is at play in our lives, directing encounters, emotional bonds, and even conflicts that ultimately promote our inner growth. To make sense of all this, we need to understand the concept of reincarnation as a cycle that doesn't end in a single life. The idea that the soul returns repeatedly to Earth or other planes of existence isn't new. It appears in ancient cultures and religions, like Hinduism, Buddhism, and various other spiritual traditions. When we talk about reincarnation, we evoke a worldview where each life is both a consequence of past choices and a seed for future experiences. In this scenario, not only personality but also innate talents, family challenges, and even illnesses can be understood as part of a greater plan outlined by the soul in collaboration with higher forces or universal laws, such as karma. So, when a soul leaves its physical body at the moment of death, it's believed it doesn't just disappear. Instead, it continues its journey in subtle dimensions, carrying with it the memories of other existences and preparing for the next step. All of this happens because spiritual evolution requires countless opportunities for learning, and each incarnation is a chance to mature, resolve karmic debts, adjust energy patterns, and strengthen ties that weren't fully resolved in past lives. At this point, we get to the most fascinating part, the choice of parents. How do we explain that the same family can have kids with such different personalities, opposite life goals, and unusual sensitivities? Or that some people seem to be born into families that don't understand them and yet develop incredibly strong bonds, while others, even having much in common with their relatives, seem to not fit in? Within spiritual understanding, these discrepancies make sense when we view the family as a karmic school. Each soul, before reincarnating, analyzes, at a level of consciousness far beyond what we can grasp in the earthly plane, what experiences will be necessary for the next step in its evolution. This includes choosing parents who provide the perfect circumstances for specific learnings. This process isn't random. There's a vibrational attraction between the soul looking to reincarnate and the energy field of those who will receive it as their child. Thus, a set of vibrations, intentions, and lessons to be worked on aligns for the incarnation to take place. We could compare this to an orchestra, where each instrument has its specific function to create total harmony. Similarly, souls carefully prepare, tuning in with groups of beings that share similar missions or karmic ties to resolve. The word karma means action, but we can also think of it as a law of cause and effect. For every action, there's a reaction. It's this mechanism that organizes the circumstances of each life so that there are no coincidences from a spiritual viewpoint. When a soul chooses a particular family, there are deep reasons that go beyond simple emotional affinities. There might be a need to repair past actions, to make up for something experienced in another existence, or even to strengthen love bonds that were interrupted. Sometimes, this choice involves challenges. A child may be born into a troubled home, face tough conditions, or even encounter illnesses early on. From a human perspective, we might consider this unfair or challenging. However, from a spiritual viewpoint, these experiences could serve a greater purpose of refining the soul, promoting its evolution. It's worth noting that this process isn't about fatalism. The soul isn't permanently stuck to the mistakes or successes of past lives. It carries a stock of potentials and karmic obligations, but each life brings opportunities to reframe relationships and situations, freeing itself from old ties. In other words, choosing parents is just the first part of a journey that continues with our own choices, free will, and the ability to transform our reality. An essential element in this whole process is the so-called veil of forgetfulness. Why don't we come into this world remembering who we were, what we did, or who we loved intensely in past lives? After all, if we carry such a rich baggage of experiences, wouldn't it be easier to evolve if we had access to those memories from day one? The explanation that various spiritual lines offer is that this temporary forgetfulness is a kind of protection mechanism. It allows us to fully experience life in a physical body without the interference of emotions or traumas that could be unbearable if all the details came to light. Imagine if you were born remembering perfectly all the losses, tragedies, or even violent acts you committed in another existence. That emotional weight could be so heavy that it might block new learning opportunities. Plus, the veil of forgetfulness ensures a kind of equality of conditions. Every life starts with a relatively blank slate, allowing souls to develop love, empathy, and brotherhood based on present circumstances, not on resentments and prejudices from past lives. This doesn't mean that the entire past is completely erased. On the contrary, memories remain latent in the unconscious or in subtle bodies. As the soul evolves, it may have flashes of those recollections in dreams, regressions, or even through intuitions and insights that seem to come out of nowhere. However, most of the time, the veil of forgetfulness allows for a genuine immersion in the present, making the game of life an opportunity to rediscover universal values. To better understand what happens to the soul after death and before rebirth, it's worth exploring the notion of bardos, common in traditions like Tibetan Buddhism. The term bardo refers to the intermediate states through which consciousness can transition when separating from the physical body and before linking to a new form of existence. Traditionally, there are said to be 6 bardos, each related to a specific stage of transition. Simplifying, we could see these states as different phases of consciousness where the soul, or subtle mind, depending on the terminology, experiences various aspects of liberation, judgment, or preparation for the next incarnation. The bardos would be opportunities for learning and also for releasing certain attachments. During this time, the soul can revisit lessons learned, confront fears, and even have visions of possible futures. This process is considered fundamental for preparing a fresh start in another body since it allows consciousness to refine and align with new energies. Although the bardo system is complex and rich in detail, its essence is to show that death isn't an abrupt end, but a transitional state where the soul still has access to profound insights and can even choose, consciously or not, the type of experience that will follow. It's like being in a sacred intermission between 2 acts of a play, a moment backstage where we can rearrange the set, change costumes, and get ready to return to the stage of life. The choice of the next partner or companion in a future life can also be influenced by these intermediate experiences. Often, souls that have had strong relationships, whether loving, familial, or even hostile, feel a mutual attraction to reunite in future existences. In this sense, the bardo can serve as a moment of reconciliation and definition of new purposes. If there's something that couldn't be completed or forgiven while the souls were embodied, that energy can reverberate on the spiritual plane until it's resolved. That's why it's common to hear stories of people who, upon meeting someone, feel an immediate affinity or a sense that they've known each other from somewhere. From a spiritual standpoint, these connections can be karmic ties, woven over several lives, leading souls to be drawn together to deepen or heal that bond. Of course, in everyday life, we don't have such clear awareness of this. But signs can emerge in dreams, in coincidences, or in synchronicities that seem to indicate there's something bigger at play. It's in this sense that understanding the dynamics of the bardos and how the soul transitions between one life and another can offer clues on how and why we meet certain people along our path. If you're finding this content interesting, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Here, we seek to deeply understand the mysteries surrounding life after death, reincarnation, and all these spiritual phenomena that often escape our immediate understanding. Each time we open ourselves to new perspectives, we expand our consciousness beyond material appearances. And it's precisely in this expansion that we find meaning, acceptance, and, why not, a certain dose of peace in the face of the inevitable cycle of life and death. It's important to highlight that the process of choosing parents and, later, partners isn't something that happens in a purely rational manner. It's a level of spiritual intelligence where the soul, free from the limitations of the physical brain, sees the repercussions of each choice on a very broad horizon. There are no rigid judgments or arbitrary impositions. There are universal laws of balance, love, compassion, and justice that govern this entire process. Practically speaking, when it's time to reincarnate, the soul identifies with a vibrational field that resonates with specific frequencies of parents or family. If there's love that needs to be strengthened, it will align with parents capable of nourishing that experience. If there are old conflicts that need resolution, circumstances might arrange themselves so that the involved parties have the chance to readjust their relationship. If there's a need to develop patience, humility, or courage, the soul might choose environments that require exactly those virtues. And so the great journey of life continues. When starting a new existence, the soul goes through crucial phases in the womb, beginning to adapt to the vibrations of the physical plane and the energetic history of the parents. Some say that during this time, the soul can visit the fetus or gradually connect with it, almost like testing the waters before fully joining at birth. That's why some traditions suggest that the mother and father create a peaceful atmosphere filled with prayer or meditation, helping to welcome the soul that will become their child. These practices can establish a subtler, love-filled environment, easing tensions and preparing the way for a more harmonious incarnation. However, the situation isn't always ideal. Many are born into wars, family conflicts, or health issues. This doesn't mean the incarnation is a mistake. From a spiritual perspective, every obstacle is also an opportunity for soul development, showing resilience, empathy, and other virtues in the face of adversity. After birth, the veil of forgetfulness solidifies, and throughout childhood, the child starts adapting to this world, developing personality and interacting with family. However, certain memories might spontaneously emerge, especially in young children. Many connections to past lives happen in those early years when their conscious mind hasn't yet been molded by social conventions. Sometimes we hear stories of kids talking about events from another life with such rich detail. While there's plenty of controversy and skepticism, many researchers and scholars see this as evidence that reincarnation might be more than just a myth. In some cases, these spontaneous memories fade over time, perhaps because the veil of forgetfulness thickens as the child integrates into their parents' culture and reality. Some believe that with the right techniques and guidance, it's possible to recover these memories later in adolescence or adulthood through memory regression or specific spiritual practices. All of this leads us to a fundamental question: if reincarnation is a process of choice, learning, and evolution, how can we live our lives to make the most of every opportunity? One possible answer is that we should cultivate awareness. The more we recognize that every event, every person, and every challenge might have a greater purpose, the more open we become to learning the lessons life offers us. Another answer is to nurture values like compassion, love, and forgiveness. If we see that each current relationship could be a reunion, whether to deepen love or to overcome grudges, we're likely to act with more empathy and tolerance. Forgiveness, for instance, can break karmic cycles spanning multiple existences. Love, in turn, strengthens positive bonds that can create not only well-being in this life but also an elevated vibrational field for the future. Additionally, it's crucial to emphasize that understanding the cycle of life and death shouldn't pull us away from the present moment. Quite the opposite, it can help us live more fully, free from the anxiety of believing everything ends definitively with death. Knowing that life is cyclical and that the soul continues to exist can bring the calm needed to face difficult situations, as we realize that no pain is permanent and even physical separations can be reconnected in other realms or lives. Thus, reflecting on death shifts from something morbid to a source of wisdom. Conscious preparation for death doesn't mean we stop living intensely, but rather acknowledge that each moment is unique and can contribute to a larger project of inner growth. An important detail for those interested in the concept of bardos and the transition between lives is the practice of meditation or states of expanded consciousness. Many traditions suggest that by training our minds to maintain serenity, we're preparing for the moment we leave our physical bodies. That's because, in the moments after death, energies and emotions tend to become very intense, and consciousness confronts its own mental creations. If a person is trained in meditative practices, they will be better equipped to remain stable and clear-minded, navigating the bardos with less turbulence. In this sense, studying these processes and applying techniques like breathing, prayers, meditation, and visualization to daily life can greatly aid both inner balance now and future transitions. And if, amid this journey, the soul feels the need to unite with other souls to continue evolving together, the process of choosing partners and relationships in future existences will happen naturally. The affinities and challenges we experience here may recur or transform there, always considering the central goal of growing in love and wisdom. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming reflections and discoveries about the spiritual world. The more we inform ourselves and share knowledge, the clearer the connections become that link our experiences in this material plane to the subtle dimensions awaiting us. At the same time, cultivating an open mind helps us respect different worldviews, as there are multiple traditions and religions offering valuable narratives about what happens after death and why we reincarnate repeatedly. However, even in the face of diverse approaches, the central idea tends to be similar: death is not the end, but rather an interval in the process of evolution, and each life is a precious opportunity for transformation. Some prefer a more scientific or psychological view of this phenomenon, discussing concepts like the collective unconscious or genetic inheritances that could explain certain memories and tendencies. Yet, scientific and spiritual explanations can converge in many areas. Increasingly, neuroscience and quantum physics are starting to recognize that consciousness might not be limited to the brain but somehow connected to subtler fields of energy. Ultimately, the debate over how the soul chooses its next parents or partners after death doesn't have to be confined to blind belief or absolute skepticism. We can approach the topic as a working hypothesis, seeking signs and evidence in our own life experiences, in the accounts of people who've undergone regressions, in spiritual traditions that have spanned centuries, or even in our own intuition. If we stay receptive, we'll find that spirituality isn't just an abstraction, but something that manifests in our daily lives, in the challenges we face, and in the connections we form. It's possible to look at our current family and recognize that, perhaps, it's the perfect setting for us to develop patience, courage, or generosity. We might realize that a current or past partner is someone we've shared other journeys with, and that they've returned to strengthen that bond or teach us lessons in forgiveness. The very notion of soulmates or twin souls appears in various traditions as a way to explain these reunions. In this context, it's not that two souls are incomplete on their own, but rather that there's a profound affinity that brings them together for mutual growth. Of course, this doesn't imply irrevocable destinies. Every choice made at the soul level can be revisited and transformed as circumstances and consciousness evolve. In conclusion, it's worth reflecting on how much these ideas can influence our approach to life here and now. If we believe that death is just a passage to another state of consciousness, there's no reason to fear it as an absolute end but rather respect it as an inevitable transition, one we can prepare for with wisdom and serenity. If we acknowledge that the choice of parents and future relationships is part of a karmic plan, then each relationship we have, no matter how difficult or wonderful, serves as a step on the ladder of our personal evolution. Keeping this in mind, we tend to value each moment of togetherness more, seek healing and forgiveness when necessary, and embrace opportunities to love more deeply. Thus, spiritual knowledge shifts from being something mystical and distant to becoming a practical tool for improving our lives and the lives of those around us. It's this inner transformation that, as the wise say, resonates beyond this existence, shaping the light we carry and spread in future ones. After all, understanding reincarnation, the veil of forgetfulness, karma, and the bardos isn't merely about mastering concepts but feeling the interconnection that binds us and recognizing that every decision, every encounter, every challenge is a vital piece of our cosmic puzzle. We hope this journey of reflection helps you find more clarity, peace, and meaning in your own path, and that together we can expand our understanding of life and what might exist beyond it. Ultimately, the more we grasp the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, the freer we become to live fully, unafraid of the unknown, and with the assurance that each step taken holds infinite relevance for our soul and the greater whole.